Monopolistic competition are 1. Relatively large number of sellers, 2. Differentiated products which are similar but not identical, 3. Some control over price, 4. Easy entry and exit such as low barriers, 5. A lot of non-price competition and advertising. Some examples of monopolistic competition are fast food restaurants, furniture companies, jewelry stores, hair salons, and clothing manufacturers. In the short run, if the graph is at a loss, in the long run firms will leave, driving up the demand for firms already in the market. Firms leave so demand increases until there is no economic profit. Price and quantity increase and TR equals TC. In the short run, if the graph is at a loss, in the long run firms will leave, driving up the demand for firms already in the market. Firms leave so demand increases until there is no economic profit. Price and quantity increase and TR equals TC. At long-run equilibrium, it is not allocatively efficient because price does not equal MC. It's also not productively efficient because they're not producing at the minimum ATC. Pause the video and draw monopolistic competition at long-run equilibrium. This should be your marginal revenue, demand right above it, MC, that's a J, and this is ATC. You want to produce where MC equals D, and this space right here is your excess capacity.
Oligopolies are more closely related to a monopoly than they are to monopolistic competition or a perfect competition. The characteristics of a monopoly are there are few large producers, generally less than 10 of them. They have identical or differentiated products. It depends on the type of oligopoly. There are high barriers of entry, such as economies of scale, high startup costs, and the ownership of new raw materials. There is control over price, so they are price makers, and mutual independence, in which firms use strategic pricing in order to get the highest profit that they can. Price leadership for an oligopoly does not have its own graph, in which this case collusion between companies is illegal and the firms cannot set the prices. There may be temporary price wars in this if not all companies follow suit to the original price and try to undercut one another. This often happens with gas stations, in which case they may set different prices from a gas station across the street from one another in order to try to maximize profits. This generally results in a price war, in which case they both take a hit to their profit until the price is eventually stabilized, in which you are both making a profit again. Another kind of oligopolies are non-colluding oligopolies. These oligopolies have a kinked demand curve model. If the firms are not colluding, they are likely to react to competitors' pricing in two ways. They will either match the price. If one firm cuts its prices, then other firms will follow suit, causing inelastic demand. This is the steeper part of the demand curve on the more rightward side. Or they will choose to ignore the change, in which if one firm raises prices, others maintain the same price, causing elastic demand. is on the more leftward side of the demand curve. This also causes the marginal revenue to have a large dip, in which at a certain point where the kink occurs, the marginal revenue drops significantly. For colluding oligopolies, one of the three kinds of oligopolies, they have the same graph as a monopoly, as together they act as one business controlling the entire market. In this case, they form a cartel in which they agree on setting a high fixed price in output. The cartel must have a way to punish the cheaters, or people who try to set a lower price in order to maximize profit, in which generally they put you out of business by lowering all of their prices to the point where you can no longer compete. Again, together, these firms act as a monopoly. Game theory is something that oligopolies use in order to make the most possible profit. Since there is a small amount of companies, they can often use game theory with just one other company to maximize profit. In this example, Company 1 has a dominant strategy on early, as if it were arriving early buses, meaning that they would have no reason to ever price late, as they would always make less profit, no matter what their competitors choose to do. If Company 1 chooses early, since they have the dominant strategy, Company 2 would also choose early, reacting to Company 1's decision. Company 2 has no dominant strategy, seeing as they must react to Company 1's decision as to how to make the most profit. Since they can make the most profit in early, both companies would have run the early bus system, in which Company 1 makes $10 and Company 2 makes $9, making the highest total profit of $19. The general concepts that you need to remember for Unit 4 are excess capacity, as discussed before monopolistic competition, is the gap between the minimum ATC output and the profit maximizing output. The profit maximizing rule is where you produce where MR equals MC and charge at demand, which only comes into play for colluding oligopolies, non-colluding oligopolies, and monopolies. The shutdown point is where you shut down if price is less than average variable cost, or the minimum average variable cost is the shutdown point, seeing as there is no point to produce when the price is less than that, as you will be running a loss no matter how much you produce. Now pause the video and draw the graph of a non-colluding oligopoly. Remember, this is the graph with a kinked demand curve. To start this off, like I said, you're going to have the kinked demand curve. Like so. This area of the demand curve is the elastic range. And the steeper sloping part is the inelastic range. Now for the marginal revenue line, this is a great drop off where the kink begins. Here's the kink and vertically going downwards. And then it'll begin again down here, giving you your marginal revenue line. Now in this case, this point would be the equilibrium of production, right where the kink is. So at this point, this will be your price equilibrium. And your quantity equilibrium down here. Now remember, if one firm decides to increase its price, it will result in the other firms ignoring that increase in price and that firm going out of business. If that firm decides to decrease its price, going downwards, it will either result in a higher quantity of them also going out of business based on the fact that they now are making less of a profit on each individual item. If you admit to the crime, you'll serve less time. I'll give you 1 minute to decide. If you...